So, welcome everyone to this week's episode of ShatterCast. I am joined by all of my lovely friends and family here. But first, before we get started, I want to ask a question. Derek, why was Alexander Hamilton always in the garden?
I'm not sure, John. Why?
He was looking for more time.
Man.
And welcome back. Thank you for watching this episode. We're excited. We are, yes, going to be talking about the Hamilton musical. I am joined by, of course, my lovely wife, Hannah, my friends Derek, Brian, and Gabriel.
Hey,
My friends, Hamilton.
Hamilton.
I mean, I liked it quite a bit. Not everyone on the panel today loved Hamilton as much as me, so we are going to have a spectrum of opinions on it. So we're going to talk about the positives, the negatives. I will open up with a few of the positives. I thought the fact that we had a hip-hop musical is phenomenal. I didn't listen to the soundtrack for years. I didn't. She listened to it a lot, but she had headphones in. I didn't know anything going in except I had seen a few interviews with Lin-Manuel Miranda, and I knew what it was about. And I know who Alexander Hamilton is, and I went into it completely blind because I figured I would enjoy it, and I didn't want to just listen to the soundtrack. That was a great decision for me. I really liked it. Derek, let's start with you. What are some things that you liked about Hamilton?
Sure, yeah. First, just some quick disclaimers or warnings. It does contain some language, some sexual situations. So again, it's very popular. A lot of people have gone to see it now that it's gone to Disney Plus. But again, parents, make your own decisions about kids. There you go. All right. So what did I like about it? I love the creativity, as you're just saying, John. The fact that Lin-Manuel could mix so many different genres of music together is amazing. When I was in college, one of the things I love to do is write songs, just me and God, I would have fun doing that. And I listened to so many different types of music that sometimes my songs would be like rock and roll, rap, all these different things. And I was like, man, no one would get my songs. Like, they wouldn't understand this. Then, of course, Hamilton comes out and like, I should have just published them. So I just love the creativity. And I think one of the reasons that Lin-Manuel, I was looking at an interview, said he used hip-hop is there's so much information that he's trying to convey in this thing that hip-hop has so many, and rap, you can express so much in a small amount of time. And so just for that to be popular, for that to be on Broadway, I think is really good for all different types of genres and styles and things. So I would say the music is one amazing thing. What about the rest of you guys?
Well, I really enjoy the music. I thought it was pretty fun to listen to. The R&B, what you were saying, the hip hop, and the way they were, like the cast itself singing it, it was very exciting. I wasn't able to watch it or to listen to it live, but I think that would have been an amazing experience. I was just listening to some of the bass lines and the lyrics that they would use and how they would use it, like one like here and there, just like the play on words and all those things, and it was pretty fun. I was also the same as what John was saying. I was listening to some interviews with Mr. Lin, and it was pretty fun the way that he also not only used hip hop itself, but he used also some of the iconic songs in hip hop as part of his writing experience, let's put it like that. And the harmonies that, I don't know if you wrote the music completely, is that
on a piano,
the whole thing? So like some of the harmonies that are used in it are pretty exciting to listen to, and the way that it grows up, and the way that, for example, one of my favorite ones, the ones that I thought that was exciting, and this is more about like the musical itself, not only about the music, but the musical experience, was what's the name of the song of the King when he starts saying like
You'll be back.
You'll be back.
yeah,
Yeah.
and with like his expressions, and something that I really like about actors when they're singing and when they're expressing is that they're just like, you can see their faces, and it's like it's not only about the music, but it's about their expressions, like the saliva and like the first rows they had to use like umbrellas, maybe, I don't know.
That's just how he sings, though. That's just how he
Yeah,
sings.
apparently that's normal for Jonathan Groff.
Yeah, well, and you make a great point there, Gabe. One of the things that I was going to say is follow up what Derek was saying is the musical was good, and then I was really enjoying it, and then Jonathan Groff comes out, and everyone's immediately laughing and cheering, and I'm like, why? Like, they just like when the King walks out, I'm just like, does everyone know something I don't? They probably all had been listening to the soundtrack, so they did. But he comes out, and suddenly it went from being like this hip hop musical to him having a song that is classic Broadway. The way that he sang it, the way that he performed it, it felt like a classic Broadway song. And so like the juxtaposition of that next to this scrappy hip hop style was really, really exciting for me. So I agree completely, Gabe.
And I think the juxtaposition was probably on purpose because of the contrast of the monarchy being so far removed from the revolution and everyone in the colonies. So yeah, some things that really stand out to me, in addition to what everyone else has already said, two things. One, the songs tell the story so well that there's no lines. Like, I know that there's a few musicals like that, like Les Miserables, for example, everything is sung. But I remember I've been listening to the soundtrack before it was released on Disney Plus for the entire performance, and I just remember thinking, man, I feel like I know the story. But then I watched the actual stream of the show. I was like, oh, that's because there's nothing in between all these songs. And then, of course, the original Broadway cast is phenomenal. Philippa Sue, Leslie Odom Jr., of course, Lin-Manuel. And I just thought they were great. And I saw in an interview with Lin before Disney had announced the deal of streaming the performances, that they had recorded this performance that we now know and love on Disney Plus
years ago, like 3 years ago. Yeah.
And Lin said in an interview that he did that because he doesn't know what they're going to end up doing with it, but he wanted to take away the brag from people that had said, I saw the original Broadway cast. And I'm sure that the other iterations of casts all around the nation are phenomenal as well, but there's something special about the OBC.
Yeah. Who plays Washington?
Christopher Jackson.
Christopher Jackson has a heavenly voice. And oh my gosh, I love it so much. Brian, what about you? What are some things that you liked? And then we'll be fair and we'll dive into some criticisms of the show as well.
I personally loved it. I was the same in John. I didn't listen to any of the soundtrack before. But going back and watching it, I guess recognized the songs because it's kind of popular. So obviously it was going around on the internet. But before, I'm like constantly having a Hamilton song. Ever since I watched it, I have a different Hamilton song stuck in my head every day.
Yeah, I listen to Hamilton a lot now. I just didn't listen to it before.
I know. I wish I knew about it sooner. But the things I liked is Lin really did a good job writing and how he did everything. He does a lot of motifs and callbacks. So like a motif in music is just kind of calling back to something that was said before. So the opening scene with the words, not good things about Hamilton, that's like repeated through a lot of the musical. Yeah. I love the production with the stage production, obviously.
The moving stage.
Yeah.
Like the custom spin stage.
Yeah, when it first started rotating, I was just like, oh, this is a different level. Okay.
Like all custom. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
The cool things that they did was such a simple stage too, and like when they went into bullet time, when like had a character actually play, and then there's times when they purposely did everything backwards for certain scenes, and just all that.
For what's her name? never be satisfied for that song when they did the rewind thing.
Yes. Angelica, maybe?
Angelica.
Yeah, Angelica, her song.
We've also mentioned a couple times. Hamilton was so hard to see live. I never got the chance to, just getting tickets and things like that. Everyone keeps talking about the show. This is a big win for Disney Plus, but also for everyone to now have access to it by seeing the original cast on film. It opens up to so many people who may not have been able to see it originally. So I think that's a huge positive. And one more positive I would say is just there was an amazing, they call it colorblind cast. So there's amazing cast that was diverse, and they added their own just swagger to it, their own sound. They have amazing people. I love Lafayette, just his character, he was just amazing. Angelica, all of them have beautiful voices. Angelica, the way to be able to sing the way she does and rap, all of them did that. I don't think people understand how difficult it is to actually rap. Because rap often changes the melody, and so to be able to both sing, rap is amazing. So those were a couple of things that I just love too.
Yeah, I completely agree. Man, I think my favorite song in the whole play was probably Nonstop. It was just about 6.5 minute song right there in the middle of the production. And honestly, I think that song probably has the most callbacks and just of the entire play. You've got things from My Shot, things from Satisfied, things from
History Has Its Eye on You, Helpless.
Helpless, like that song is just an amalgamation of the play, really, and it's phenomenal. So love the musical. What was that?
I was just gonna say The World Is Wide Enough also has a lot, right? When Hamilton died, when his dies, he has like so many callbacks to everything.
Very much so. As well. Well, and Derek, you brought up a fantastic point of the cast being wonderfully diverse. Matter of fact, I think didn't Leslie Odom Jr. only join once he realized how diverse the cast was? Was that him or was it someone else?
It wasn't exactly that, but yeah, Leslie saw the song "The Story of Tonight," and he saw these 3 men on diverse backgrounds, 3 men of color, just like singing together on stage and singing about life. And that song, "The Story of Tonight," is what really got him hooked on wanting to be a part of it.
Yeah,
and that's how Lynn wrote it, was to have the diverse cast, right?
Yeah. It was intentional, and I think that it was a good decision. At the same time, sort of switching gears here into some of the criticisms of the show. Some people think that by having a diverse cast, to someone who maybe doesn't fully know that portion of history or know, what the United States was like when it was first forming, they might get the misunderstanding and think that reality was that diverse back then, and it wasn't. The reality is pretty much all of those people were white, and so there can be a disconnect of maybe looking through rose-tinted glasses at history if Hamilton the musical is your history textbook, which I would recommend not to treat any musical as your history textbook. But it's a fair criticism because people are going to think that. And I think that opens up a discussion we may not even have time for today, but we could even talk about whether or not creators are responsible for the way that people interpret their content. I think that might be just another topic. So there's a teaser for maybe another topic we're going to have.
Gabe's like, I want it. Tag me in, coach.
The writer of the biography that the musical the book that Lynn originally read for the musical was the historian. So there is some historical accuracy, but obviously Lynn made his own creative decisions to make it more
movies that say
drama.
Based on a true story. Like, oh well, it's based these little details. Anyway,
I mean, you know what I mean, Gabe?
Yeah, I do. But that's actually to that point. That's one of my my criticisms towards it and against it, I guess I would say. Many people use language, and that's one of the things that I say, like, it's not necessary so many times to use like the foul language, like what Derek was saying at first. I don't see the need for it, and many people say, well, it's because it's more accurate. but it's like we start then choosing what we want to be accurate and what we don't want to be accurate. So it's like, oh, well, with this, I'm okay because this is the way that I act and I want to justify the way that I act, or in this case, the way that I say things and what words I use. So I'm going to be accurate in this. But since I don't like this, then I'm just going to put it and portray it in a different light. So it's like, it's what you were saying again back there is like, well, is their responsibility? Not going to get into it, but that's one of my criticisms. If we're going to say like we don't like something, that's one of the things that I didn't like. I don't think that it's necessary to use foul language or many of those things just to portray a true story. But anyway, I agree.
Fair enough.
Thanks for sharing. John, I mentioned the cast. We were talking about representation in other movies. I think Hannah was bringing up a good point where we're talking about like the Black Panther and just how important it is to be able to look at something on the big screen and see someone who looks like you, because it helps you imagine that could be me. And so the positive of having such a diverse cast is that still today, Broadway and theater is not super diverse. And to see so many different people of different backgrounds and different colors up there making something beautiful, it makes people who might look different or people of color be able to look at that and be like, oh, I could be up there, I could do that as well. And so that's great. To the historical part that John was talking about, again, most of our founding fathers did not look like that. And so we had a group of people, and again, I'm very patriotic, I love our country, but in the beginning of our country, we had people making decisions for others who did not look like them that would impact them for many years. And so yeah, there's this concern and there's this caution to us for our government today, for businesses or whatever. There's this thought to have your board, have your leaders look like the people you are trying to serve, because those people can bring up stuff that you may not be thinking about. They can say, hey, in my community, or for people who look like me, these are some of the things we're going through. So keep that in mind when you're making laws, intentional, unintentional, all that stuff. And we can get into that a long time. But again, I think seeing the cast do so well, it makes us forget historically it wasn't like that. And there's some stuff that we can draw from that as well.
It's interesting to that point. How many people, and I'm not saying that I agree, for example, but when we talk about whitewashing in movies, like one example, Ghost in the Shell, right? Oh, why is this white girl playing a really Asian girl, right? Well, it's the same thing. Then we start criticizing all this, and then I love that the cast is diverse. I think that it's a very good thing, but at the same time, it's like, okay, well, why is this person playing somebody that it's not of their own? We call it race or ethnicity, however you want to say it. So it's like, is that a criticism, or is it just because I just want to see one part of the picture? So anyway, that was my thought of it.
It's a good thought. Overall, I think it's a net positive because it can inspire so many people. Again, just historically, don't forget that that's not what it was originally like. And again, a group of men were making decisions.
John said, don't take it as your textbook. Obviously, it's a musical, and it's not going to be 100% accurate.
Yeah. Honestly, I think, when I left, I didn't leave it. When I turned off my iPad that I was watching it on, I felt satisfied. I guess that's because I don't have the same aspirations as Alexander Hamilton, who could never be satisfied. Anyway, I enjoyed it. I was pleased with it. I felt like it did a good job, and we can learn a lot of good and bad things from a musical like Hamilton. Burr, Aaron Burr, the main antagonist, you could say, he had a lot of faults, but he had some good things too. He wasn't rash usually. He was a little rash near the end, but so was Hamilton all the time. But he thought through the consequences of what he was going to do. Alexander was much more a fire from the hip kind of guy. And I think that there are times in our life where we need to be able to make quick decisions and jump on something, and there are times that we need to slow down. And so there's neither of those two characters were in the right all the time. Both of them are different facets of what we need to be. And in the show, there was a song called Satisfied, and this idea that he will never be satisfied. There's a lot that we can unpack there as Christians on what is that constant hunger is usually seen as a good thing. But if it disturbs us from being content, and if it takes us away from finding peace, then is it really from God? Right? So like we should be hungry, but there's a limit. Like we should be satisfied, right, at some point in the things of God. So there's a lot to unpack there. I have some thoughts, but I don't want to dominate the start of this chat. Looks like you have something to say.
Yeah, well, when you're
looking at me expectantly the whole time.
when you were talking about how it's a balance and both characters represent two extremes, it reminded me of a line in one of the last few songs called "The World Is Wide Enough," and this was shortly after Aaron had shot and killed Alex.
Spoilers.
I mean,
spoilers
it's like
for
the whole
actual
thing.
history.
So historical figure.
Actual U.S. history. So you probably heard about it in 8th grade and just forgot. Sorry.
And Aaron's line in one of the lines in the song says, "I was too young and blind to see that the world was wide enough for Hamilton and me," and the fact that they both could like exist. And I think it's also a metaphor for like both attitudes of being slow and waiting for opportunities, and also taking opportunities and pushing forward and being ambitious. There's both can exist together, and that there is a balance that needs to happen in your own life.
Yeah, definitely. Let me read this verse that we kind of were thinking about tied around this conversation. Philippians 4:11-13. Not that I was ever in need, for I have learned how to be content with whatever I have. I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I have learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it is with a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little. For I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. And that, to me, speaks of contentment and speaks of being satisfied. It speaks of trust in God. And when we talk about this conversation of being satisfied, being content, I'm reminded of a phrase that I learned from Craig Groeschel. There's an acronym called GETMO, 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 and it stands for good enough to move on. And it's this leadership principle that perfectionism eventually causes paralysis. And there, you need to be able to come to a point where this is good enough for me to move on. And I think that's a learned skill. And it goes right along with being satisfied and content that nothing will ever be truly perfect this side of heaven. And being able to say, you know what, hey, that's good enough. We're gonna adjust and we're gonna move on. That's something that I struggle with and work on.
I like what you said about trusting God being the main reason why you should like move forward or wait. Because if you look at the two characters, both had the same reasoning for either waiting or pushing forward, and that was fear. They were both afraid of either missing out on an opportunity or ruining their chance of grasping what they want. And if we go into it with an attitude of fear, then we're going to end up like the other characters, where they're not satisfied or they're always waiting on something to happen. But if we go into it with an attitude of trusting God, then that's going to be much more beneficial to our lives, much more satisfying.
I think that's a beautiful way to think about it. That passage, I think the key is I can do everything through Christ. Yeah. I think we forget that last part. It's through God. And I love what you're saying there, Hannah. The two characters that kind of played this out for me was Eliza, who was Hamilton's wife, and she constantly was like, Hamilton, why are you always, Brian's over there singing songs, Hamilton, why are you always trying to strive for this next thing? Maybe you could be satisfied. Is our family not enough? Am I not enough? Like, why are you always looking for that next thing? And it's this idea that it seemed like Hamilton, and this is something I thought the play did well, he wasn't a perfect person. He wasn't a perfect character. He always felt that he needed to prove himself. And you have his wife saying, you have a family, you have people who think you're important. Why can't you be set? Why can't you, isn't that enough for you? And then you had Angelica, her sister, who was dangerous at times, who's like, who constantly talks about, who's like kind of egging him on, like, will you be satisfied with this life and things like that. And I love one of the things I love about God is it's always this third way that he finds out. Like there's this thing that with maybe this could be enough. The negative is that settling for something just because it's convenient or just because it's there. You know, when God places a dream on our heart or a call in our life, don't settle for less than what God has for you. But then it's on the other extreme, this idea of being satisfied. I want this and I want this and I want this. If we're always striving for that next thing, we're never thankful and we never have gratitude for what God has given us, and we can never rest in what God has given us. So I think it's this both and, it's this in between that God is always striving for us to have, just this ability to be content and thankful for what we have, but also when God gives us a call, when God gives us a dream, to always yearn for that and always move forward with that. So
it's I see it as, where is that dream coming from? Is it coming from your own desires and your own lusts, which means basically this just desires whatever you want and you want that out of selfish reasons, or is it actually coming out of fulfillment of who God is in your life? I was looking just now, I was finding just now the part where it talks about, for the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil. This is the New American Standard Version. It says in 1 Timothy 6, chapter 6, verses 6 through 10. But godliness actually is a means of great gain when accompanied by contentment. Verse 7, for we have brought nothing into the world, so we cannot take anything out of it either. If we have food and covering, with this we shall be content. But those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a snare and many foolish and harmful desires, which plunge men into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil, and some, by longing for it, have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Here I believe that it's not only talking about money itself, it's talking about the love of money, first of all. So it's that desire, that lustful desire for money, which can also it might not be even only money. It might also be like your own desires. Like, for example, in that case, like, oh, well, I want to be understood by other people. Oh, well, I have this desire to be just like, oh, this person must understand me, or I must be loved all the time. Or, for example, in that case, like, I must be seen by everybody and be an example to everybody. Those also can be snares if are not accompanied by godliness. Because in godliness, we understand that we're already full and we're complete in God. It's not that we are to find something. It's that God has already made you full. God has already made you complete. He's already, like he said in the cross, it is finished. And from there is that we can also work, knowing that there's nothing that we can do to gain him or to gain life itself, because life was a gift that was given to you and to us freely. And that therefore freely we can give it to others without thinking that we need to receive something like some kind of fulfillment in our lives. So if that's the case, then we can finally freely, we can give to others, and we can look and long for that that fulfillment of God's like what you were saying, God's goal in our lives, basically. And from that we understand that, hey, now I can take maybe one day, I can take 2 days with my family, because time is God is the master of time. So I'm freely and completely made in him. It doesn't matter if today I don't do specifically this thing to fulfill this goal, because I know that in him I'm already complete. And that his is the time. And if he wants, he can just take everything that I needed to do in 1 week and cramp it in 1 day, and poof, it's done. Or in 1 second, oh, look at that, So that was what I was thinking while you guys were.
Righteous procrastination.
Righteous procrastination.
That's all I heard. That's
We're gonna have to unpack that later.
That was really good. Thank you, Gabe.
That's what I was thinking about. On what we were talking and the conversation where it was going. So.
Thank you very much. Any other final thoughts here?
Kind of bouncing off what Derek said with Philippians 4:13. That's used a lot, like by itself, just that we can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. But I feel like adding in these other two verses kind of gives it a different meaning, that no matter if we have nothing or if we're alone, we still have God with us and he's there for us.
I mean, really, that passage is talking about endurance. Right. And I think it would be just as accurate to say that through Christ I can endure all things, because he's talking about operating in excess and operating with nothing. And usually we focus on the excess. We focus on, I can do everything. I can do this. I can be successful because Christ will empower me to do that. And it's like, sure, yeah, but he'll also empower you when you have nothing.
Right.
And so that's definitely, I agree completely. Thank you all for being here, for talking about the show Hamilton. We've really enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. If you're asking yourself what comes next, soon you'll see. And we'll see you next time. Catch you guys later.
Oh, remember you belong to me.
We're just gonna sing. We're just gonna sing the whole show right now.
Peace out, guys.
Later.
Deuces.